Okay, I am back as I said I would be. So this is the second video of at least 3 in a series that I'm calling Out of the Frying Pan into the Fire. And I am going to discuss my misgivings and concerns about the current state of the Earth dynamic system, which is supposed to be sustaining us, keeping us alive. We evolved here. We've never known anything else. It's the only planet that can support life in general, and certainly human life as we know it. And it's changing. It's on an excursion. It's going someplace. It's taking us with it. And it's making these changes because we have been messing around with the natural heating capacity of the Earth called the greenhouse effect. We do that by burning fossil fuels. We've known for, well, let's see, since the 60s, late 60s, 70s, that this was a problem. So a good 35, maybe 70 years, 60, maybe 70 years. And so there you go. Last time I talked about the Earth as it is, what's kind of going on, and how it behaves the way it does, and why it's important that we have been breaking down the Earth system. And I discussed symptoms of that. Now I want to talk about what's actually happening. So I discussed a little bit what's happening because I wanted to make a point that things I'm describing are... I'm getting kind of an echo here. Don't know why. I wanted to describe why things are important. And so I had to discuss how the things I identified are important, because the things I identified are breaking down. But today I want to talk about the breakdown. And the next video will be, so where are we going? If we really are embedded in this planetary system, and this planetary system is on the move, where is it going to take us? The first video is not speculative at all to speak of. It's just data, observations. This video is a little more speculative because I have to point out the things that I think are important that are happening and changing in the Earth system. And then the third video is fairly speculative because the future is the future. We don't really know. Now, we are doing science here, so let's not say we don't know anything. We absolutely do know things. And we have the example from the past. So the future of all this, where we're going, is not completely, totally, forever unknown. There are some things we can know. So, on to there. I'm going to go back to this thing I had yesterday. That's not it. It's this. So this, again, this website is earth.nullschool.net. Why am I getting an echo? Hello. What's this stupid thing? Why is that? I don't understand why that is echoing. I'm going to turn that off. Okay. It was not a big deal. You probably didn't hear it, but I could hear it. So this is, again, data. So this is what is today, right now. This is the polar vortex. Same as yesterday. It is broken into 2 fairly serious halves due to sudden stratospheric warming. Hard to say. Sudden stratospheric warming. The polar vortex is at the top of the atmosphere. Well, we didn't even discover it until recently. But there it is. And because it's kind of broken into pieces right now due to sudden stratospheric warming, we get this for the northern jet stream, and this is pathetic. There's nothing here. This is completely destroyed. The northern jet stream determines our weather. And when this thing looks like it does now, it actually can't. It actually is no longer a regulatory structure regulating our weather. It used to be, when this thing was more of a had more continuity. It was more of a ring, like it is, for example. I'll tilt the globe up. Yeah, the world is a globe, folks. Sorry to break you bad news. When the jet stream looks more like this, we call it a ring fence. And the high-speed winds, which are these pink and purple wind patterns, and you can see the direction probably here. I can enlarge this a little bit. I'm not sure it makes much difference, but this ring of high-speed air is able to hold back the cold air, in this case at the South Pole, because this happens to be the Antarctica. The one in the north should look like that, even better than that actually, but it looks instead like this. And this isn't doing anything. This isn't holding that back any cold air. And we have had here in the US, and I believe also in Europe and probably Russia. Well, I know Russia because Moscow has been basically frozen solid for a while now because of the fact that this is happening in the north, right, where most of the people live. Most of the people live in the north. So what happens in the north is of great concern. Because this is looking like this in the north, this is not holding back cold air. The cold air is just seeping out of the north, heading south, and we have had a series of record cold snaps, as they like to call them. They like to call them cold snaps because that's their weather terminology, and they're gonna take you down this garden path, folks. They're gonna talk about this as if it's weather. It's not. This is a failure of the Earth dynamic system. The Earth dynamic system, the engine in which we live and have always lived for 300,000 years of our human Homo sapiens evolution, has been the heat engine of the Earth, which is now breaking down. So here we go. We're in for it. Right now, and it works both ways, by the way. We're having record cold snaps, Arctic air masses, at the same time, or just a week later, we have record heat, which of course comes from the equator. And then we'll have record cold, that comes from the north. And then we have record heat that comes from the south. And people are beginning to notice we had the hottest Christmas in the center of the United States, the lower 48, the center of the country. We had the hottest Christmas on record. And of course, the rest of the country was pretty hot too. So that's what's happening, folks. This is what it looks like. Read them and weep. That's your situation. So I can talk about what's happening. I might use this map to do a couple of things. We'll see how much I come back to that. So the Earth dynamic, what's happening? The Earth dynamic system, the heat engine of the Earth, is failing. It is failing. It's failing because of global heating. I explained that last time. I'm not going to explain it again this time. Go back and watch the other video. Because that at the last video is where I describe how the system works. So I'm not going to do that today. The Earth system is falling apart because of global heating. As a consequence, the patterns of winds and rains and snow and ice and seasons and winters and summers and springs and all that is now out the window. Yes, there will be times when spring will feel like spring and summer will feel like summer. But that's what you're used to is now no longer viable. Because what you're used to, and that's everything, that's 8,000 years of being used to this planet. We've been writing about this planet for 8,000 years. We've had civilizations on this planet, one form or another, for 8,000 years, if not longer. We have been growing crops in certain areas for 8,000 years. We've had great cities and great trade routes and great nations for 6 or 8,000 years in certain places. And the reason why we picked those places and the reason why we're still in those places now is because they are viable. For 8,000 years, they've been viable. So that's where you find us, humans. You find us in coastal areas because the sea level has been pretty constant. If the sea level was constantly changing by 50 or 100 feet periodically, we wouldn't have coastal cities. We wouldn't have great coastal cities. Or inland cities that are on large rivers like Paris, London, right? We wouldn't have the U.S. heartland, the middle of the country, because the Mississippi River runs right through there. And if the sea level was changing by 100 feet periodically in the last 8,000 years, then the Mississippi River would simply inundate the middle of the country with seawater. And so you couldn't have whatever we're doing in the middle of the country. We would be somewhere else. We wouldn't be in the middle of the country. We wouldn't have great agricultural regions, and so on and so forth. We are where we are, doing the things we do, because the Earth for 8,000 years has been amenable to us doing those things where we do them. Right? I mean, that should be obvious. I know it isn't obvious because no one understands this thing we call a contingent fact of history. Our great cities, our great coastal cities, where our civilizations have been and where they are, the type of crops we grow, where we grow them, where the rivers are, where the irrigation systems are, where the rain falls, where the rain doesn't fall, all of this is a contingent fact of history. And it can change. And now the Earth system is on the move. The Earth dynamic system, the machine in which we have lived for 8,000 years, if not 300,000 years, is changing. And here are the symptoms of change. Now, I'll give you the symptoms of change, but I want to point out something. Okay. I'm going to have to make a big deal about cause and effect. Cause and effect. The effect I am pointing to is that the Earth system, the machine in which we live, has been destroyed. That's an effect. There are causes for that. And we can talk about the causes, and science has been looking at the causes, but science has not been looking at the effect, that the Earth system is flying to pieces. There are some people, some individuals, who have been noticing, I'm one of those people, that the system seems to be on an excursion. The entire system, the big thing, right? The hydrosphere, the atmosphere, the lithosphere, the biosphere, okay? All these, the cryosphere, the big machine seems to be on the move. But let's talk about the symptoms of that, the things that are signs that something is amiss. I don't really have a visual for this, so I'm just going to rattle off a bunch of stuff. I just mentioned a little bit ago that we here in the U.S., where I have most of my visibility, we have seen a series of what we call whiplash weather. So record-breaking cold that extends all the way to Florida in some cases. Record-breaking cold, followed a few days later, a week later, by record-breaking heat, followed a few days later by record-breaking cold. These are symptoms. Now, some people will call that weather. It's always cold in the winter, but you just also had a record-breaking hot Christmas. How does that fit in? Well, that was nice. I know it's nice, so you don't want to talk about it, but that happened. So for someone like me, that's data. That's just some data, okay? And the other data I've noticed is that this happens periodically now. This has been going on for months. People don't want to talk about that. Here's some data for you right now, currently, as I'm recording this on the 17th of January. The state of Florida is colder than the state of Alaska. The state of Florida is colder than the state of Alaska. We're in the middle of winter, people. Florida is subtropical. Florida has iguanas. It's citrus orchards and beaches, and surfers, and people who go out in glass-bottom boats and enjoy the reefs or whatever they're doing down there. That's Florida. Florida right now is colder than the state of Alaska. Now, no one's going to connect the dots for you like that. I will connect the dots like that because I am seeing this as symptomatic of something. I'm seeing this as a symptom of the breakdown of the Earth dynamic system. Going back to this, let's find the good old United States of America. So here's the United States of America. I just mentioned two places. I mentioned Florida, which is right here, okay? And I mentioned the state of Alaska, which is right here. And now I want to point something out to you. Florida is right on the edge of this enormous dropping air mass, which is coming from the Arctic, which is cold. It's Arctic air. It's frigid. Alaska is way up here at the apex of this big thing that's coming up. This air is coming from the equator. This is hot air. So both of these things, what's happening in the state of Florida down here and the state of Alaska up here, both of these things are experiencing the same breakdown of the Earth dynamic system, except they happen to be on opposite sides of the same phenomenon. One of them is catching the cold. descending from the north. Another one is catching the heat, ascending from the equator. And so, as a consequence, the observation is that the state of Florida is colder than the state of Alaska. That's data, folks. Now, I have the receipts right here in front of me. Right here, I have why. I can tell you why that is. And if you think it's a hoax and you think it's doom-mongering and fear-mongering and you think I have an agenda and you think that science is corrupt, no, it isn't. Okay, this is what's actually happening in the Earth system. It's falling apart. And the fact that Florida is colder than the state of Alaska is data. That's happening. That's happening to us. And it is a symptom of the breakdown of the jet stream, which is what I have outlined here in this drawing. This is a symptom of the breakdown of the jet stream. So you can look at the symptoms or you can look at the cause. No one wants to look at the cause. The meteorologists just want to make one statement about Alaska. We're going to have great warm weather, folks. Please enjoy. Another meteorologist, thousands of miles away, is going to make a different statement about Florida. It's going to be cold. We might get some snow. We haven't. We're not supposed to get snow. We're in the state of Florida, but we might get some snow. And it'll be fun. And be careful when you drive, because you never drive in snow, because you never get snow. So be careful when you're on the roads. And that's the forecast from Florida. But the guy in Alaska and the guy in the Florida will never talk to each other, because they're meteorologists. My job is to point out to you that this is what's happening. Because that's what's happening. That's what's happening. That's what this video is about. Other things that are happening, let me see. Since I am here, no, I have to turn this off. Thank you. And I'll go to ocean, and I'll go to currents, and I'll go to this. I want to point out this current. There is a current that basically goes this way, and it goes up to the north, and it splits, and some part of it comes down this way. This is called the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Oceanic Circulation, and it carries hot water from down here near the equator up past the eastern U.S., up past Newfoundland, and it carries it to Europe, UK and Europe, and Norway, and Iceland. And because it's doing that, it keeps these areas artificially warm. London, I would have to look this up, but I think London, which is right about here, I'll change my color. London, which is right about here, is at the same latitude as Juneau, Alaska. Or, what is this? Newfoundland? And we don't think of London as being anything like Juneau, Alaska. Juneau, Alaska is cold. Oh, by the way, they're not cold either. I mean, I was mentioning that Alaska has record heat. Juneau, Alaska has not been cold. Juneau, Alaska has had snow, but they've also had torrential rain. There's pictures of Juneau, Alaska, the streets having a foot of water in them. Not a foot of snow, a foot of water. There's snow, and then there's a foot of water from the torrential rains. London is as warm as it is, and the UK is as temperate as it is because of this hot water that's making its way from the equator. And it is artificially warming. Now, one of the things that's happening to the AMOC is it's slowing down. This is measured. We do this instrumentally. It's slowing down because of a pulse of meltwater from Greenland. Greenland is melting. The fresh cold water pouring off of Greenland is interfering with the flow of the AMOC. This is Greenland right here, and the most of the fresh cold water spills out through here, and it interferes with the operation of the AMOC. Enough said on that. As it slows down, the ability to transport heat to the northern tier of Europe, which is fairly high up on latitude. Okay, this is fairly high up. Again, near the same latitude as Juneau, Alaska. Is being decreased. There's less hot water making its way from all the way down here in the equatorial regions, and making its way up the edges of North America into Northern Europe. The prediction is that as this continues, again, this is a symptom of global heating, because the melting of Greenland, the melting, well, probably Iceland too, the melting, not that Iceland has a lot of ice, it does, but it doesn't. The melting of Greenland is a consequence of global heating. And as it melts, a consequence of that is that the AMOC slows down. And as a consequence of that, we have less heat delivery to Northern Europe. And areas that have been enjoying for, again, 8,000 years that we've been sitting around doing human things, that have been enjoying that hot water, altering their microclimate, that's going to shut down. And the theory is that it's going to start getting cold. And if you're living in Europe, you'll be saying, hey, where's my global heating? Oh, it's everywhere, folks. Your global heating just shuts you down. Oh, but I'm so cold. Yes, and your cold is a symptom of something happening called the shutdown of the AMOC. And that happened because of the melting of the ice on Greenland. And that happened because of global heating. So there's your global heating. But, it's so cold, and, the little ice age, and all the, the Younger Dryas, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, you're screwed. Good luck surviving. And that's a real problem. I don't know how long this mini ice age is going to last, if and when it comes, but it's on the way. That's what's happening right now. That is right now in flight. People are making these observations, and they're making a prediction that the UK, the Scandinavian states, and Northern Europe are going to get cold. And so what happens to your food growing? You're growing food, you're growing certain types of food where you're growing them because of the AMOC. You're having certain lifestyles of driving your car, being on the road, heating your house with wood, or not, whatever you're doing, because of the AMOC. You've had a certain climate for a long time because of the AMOC. And AMOC is going away. It's slowing down initially, and eventually it probably stops, because that's what's happening. There's nothing going to stop this. Nothing going to stop these things from happening and to continue to happen because of the global heating. We're not doing anything to stop global heating. My wife hates it when I say this. We're not doing anything because we can't. We can't. We just can't. We can't do it. So this is going to continue. And as this continues, and as the sudden stratospheric warming continues and increases to continue, it gets worse. The breakup of the polar vortex, that's going to continue to break up the jet stream, and that's going to continue to have impacts like, for example, Alaska being warmer right now than the state of Florida right now. These are the things that are happening. The shutdown of the AMOC, these huge swings in the jet stream, pushing huge amounts of hot air into the north, dragging cold air huge distances down into the temperate regions. These are things that are happening. Another thing that's happening, I'll go back to my model. I'll turn off my drawing, and I'll go to my sea surface temperature anomalies. Okay, so this is a map of the surface of the Earth, looking at the ocean. So we're not looking at the land masses now. This is temperature anomalies. An anomaly means a departure from what the normal should be, and the normal is defined on a monthly basis. So we understand that certain times of the year it's going to be colder than certain other times of the year. So the anomalies are sensitive to date. So on this date, here in the we'll look here at the Pacific Ocean. This is the Pacific. Here's the U.S., and here's Alaska and Russia, and here's the western side of the U.S. Of the Pacific Ocean. I want to point out here that this region here contains anomalously hot water. That's what these colors mean. When you're going from reds into oranges into yellows and into whites, that's hot, anomalously hot. I can sample some of these some of these things and tell you what the temperature is. So if we go down here to where it's a normal temperature, well, let's stick to the same latitude. Here's a normal temperature. It says it's 0 degrees C anomaly. So that's normal. This dark area is normal. 0 degrees C departure. If I go over here to this yellow near Japan, south of Alaska, this is 4 degrees C above normal. So this is hotter than normal. And look where the state of Alaska is. The state of Alaska is not too far from here. We have all this warm water just south of Alaska, and right over here off of Russia too. And surprise, surprise, the state of Alaska is getting rain. It's getting rain. It gets snow sometimes, but then it also gets rain. You shouldn't be getting rain this time of year. This is dead of winter in the north. The days are the shortest. In fact, the days almost don't exist. These people at this point are almost in perpetual night. Yeah, if you live up there, you know that. If you don't live up there, you don't understand that. They are in almost perpetual darkness this time of year. But they're getting rain. So where's the heat coming from? Well, it's coming from the ocean, because the oceans are anomalously hot. And let's just spin this thing around here. You can see there are large parts of the Earth's oceans that are anomalously hot. Even way down here in the south, near the Antarctica. Anomalously warm waters. Now there's some really cold water too, and some of it's even anomalously cold, colder than expected. But just look at all this heat that's being accumulated in the system. This is an interesting area here. This spot here, this is representative of what we call the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. Right now it's in the La Nina phase, which is the cold phase. And these waters are anomalously cold. That's La Nina. So we are having right now a La Nina swing of the ENSO. However, it's predicted that midsummer coming up, this will reverse and become exceptionally warm. And that is the El Nino phase. And when this area of the South Pacific starts showing unusually warm water, then this drives the global average temperature, because it's really important. The Pacific Ocean is huge, and these areas down here at the equator are really important in determining the overall temperature of the Earth, and a bunch of other things as well. So we're in the La Nina phase right now, so as cold as it's going to get on the Earth, and soon we'll be in the El Nino, which is why I've been predicting that mid to late summer and probably into 2027, we're going to have probably some pretty big heat waves going on. So again, these are sea surface anomalies, and there have since 2023, the oceans have been as hot as the oceans on Earth have ever been in the modern human record, certainly in the scientific record. And you can see there's a lot of heat in the oceans. The oceans are anomalously hot, and most worrying of all, the Pacific Ocean is anomalously hot, except for this little band in the center near the equator where we're having a La Nina phase of the ENSO. But that will reverse, and when it does, then look out. The Atlantic is just pretty much anomalously warm. It's warmer than it should be, and the only thing, I mean, that's good for Europe, that's good for the UK, because that's your climate. But if this AMOC shuts down, then things are going to change. These are the kind of things that are happening, folks. We're seeing, I can go over here to look at the Caribbean. This is the Caribbean. You can see, well, here's Florida, and you can see Cuba here, and Haiti and Dominican Republic are here. So this is the Caribbean. Jamaica got hit with a hurricane, Melissa. Actually, I could use this. It got hit with a hurricane, Melissa, that originated. So where's Jamaica? Jamaica is right there. Can you see that? I'll make it a bigger dot. Jamaica is right there. And Melissa started right here. And Hurricane Melissa traveled this short distance to Jamaica. And in that short distance, which was about 4 days of travel across the Caribbean, it was so hot, the water was so hot, that Melissa went from a tropical disturbance, which is meaning it could become a storm, but it's not a storm yet. It went from a tropical disturbance in this short journey to a massive Category 5 hurricane, one of the biggest hurricanes we've ever had in the Caribbean basin, in 24 hours. Melissa experienced what we call bombogenesis, which sounds really scary. They're called a bomb cyclone because they just explode. They explode in size. They explode in wind velocities. The wind field gets bigger. The hurricane gets bigger vertically. It just basically explodes, but not in a destructive way. This is constructive explosion. It explodes in all the dimensions of a hurricane. And Melissa experienced double bombogenesis. So it double intensified twice in 24 hours. It went from nothing to this is going to kill us, all of us, in 24 hours. Double bombogenesis. And it was going to hit Jamaica straight on, and it didn't hit the western side, but it destroyed them. Melissa just destroyed them. And we've had similar things happen. There was another hurricane that started in the same location, but instead it went up and it hit the Gulf states, and then it went into the U.S. And right about here, this was Hurricane Helene. The same pathway. This is important. I'll make a point here in a second. Hurricane Helene, by the time I got inland, was still a hurricane. Not even overwatered anymore. It was still a hurricane. And it dumped so much water in Appalachia in the U.S. that there were entire communities just completely destroyed. Huge destruction. And they didn't know what to make of that. They weren't ready for that. They thought they didn't have to worry about it. They knew that there was a hurricane coming. It was going to probably peter out. It would maybe become a windstorm. No big deal. And it wiped them out. And they're still wiped out. They will always be wiped out. There's no recovery for those people. Just like there's no recovery for the people in the western half of Jamaica. They'll never recover. Jamaica is not wealthy enough. They're not getting enough help from the outside world. Those people are finished. The people who ended up under Hurricane Helene in Appalachia, they're finished. They will never recover. They just won't. These are events that take place because of a breakdown of the Earth system. Let me get rid of that. I will go back to here. I will go to, yes, here is our jet stream again. Dragging cold air down into Florida, dragging hot air up into Alaska. These events are symptomatic of a breakdown of the Earth dynamic system. These are not weather patterns. Your meteorologist will tell you we have some cold weather coming. We have some hot weather coming. We have a hurricane coming. They'll talk about it as if it's weather because they don't have any other language. Really, in general, humans don't have any other language. I'm introducing a different language here for the benefit of my listeners. And the language I am introducing here is that this is a machine. You experience the operation of this machine as weather. But this machine is breaking down. The things you will now start to experience are destruction. If you were living in your house and there was a storm outside and you heard the creaks and the rattles of the windows and the creaks of the doors and sometime a little gust of wind comes in under a door, you'd say, that's weather. But if that same wind tore the door off, broke through the windows, ripped the ceiling off, okay, what would you call that? Wow, we're getting some weather inside the living room. No, that you're being destroyed. The structure in which you have existed that prevented you from suffering any harm because it was rigid and it was sealed and there was ways to control what came in and what came out. You could close the windows, you could close the door, right? That system that you live inside of has been destroyed. Your roof has been ripped off. The windows have been caved in. Now the weather is coming in. What do you want to call that? Oh, it's snowing in my living room. No, that's not what's happening in your living room. It's snowing in my living room. Happens all the time. No, it never happens. But it always snows in my neighborhood. Yeah, but not in your living room. You're inside of a machine. That machine was supposed to provide a habitat for you. And you became accustomed to that. You could turn on the heat, turn on the cooling. You protect yourself from the actual weather. And in this case, what's happening to us is our home that we have lived in for 8,000 years of human history, written history, records of history, and 300,000 years of Homo sapiens, our evolution as a species. That machine is now falling apart. The doors are coming off. The roof is being torn off. You can call it weather if you want to, but it's not that. What is happening now is the Earth dynamic system is on an excursion. We are inside of it. We are going where it's taking us. We may not like it, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Well, then where's it taking us? That's video 3. Much more speculative. I mentioned the AMOC. I mentioned Europe. I mentioned freezing in Europe. Yeah, that's a possibility. That's one thing that's being offered. There's other things that are being offered as well. And I could definitely add to that. What else is happening to the planet? Well, I mentioned that the oceans are getting warmer. There are all the oceans, all the major basins are warmer. And that causes more rainfall. We're having massive rainfall events here in California and the Pacific Northwest. And they're having massive rainfall events in the U.S. Southeast. That rainfall is coming from, let's go back to ocean and temperature. Ocean, okay. Sea surface temperatures, there we are. There are warm waters here in the Gulf of Mexico that generate moisture in the air, and this is anomalously hot. Oh, you don't see it with this one, but we could see it with this one. There is anomalous heat, hotter than it should be in the Gulf of Mexico, and when that happens, then this moisture that evaporates. Wrong screen. This moisture that evaporates from the Gulf of Mexico can make its way into the lower states. And when it does that, it causes really wet storms. Or in the case like right now, where there's a cold air mass coming down and colliding with this warm, moist air, you get amazing amounts of snow. So you're either going to get amazing amounts of rain, or if there's a cold air mass coming down from the Arctic, you get amazing amounts of snow. And people who live in these areas are just not accustomed to that. Maybe rain, maybe they'll get a lot of rain, but in certain seasons. But right now, because the Gulf of Mexico is so hot, and there is so much cold air coming down from the north because of a breakdown of the jet stream. These people are right now, as I present this material today, this video, these people are getting amazing amounts of snow, which they haven't seen. And they're all excited. Oh, we get to make snowmen. Yay, us. Okay, yes, you do. But how are you going to drive around? How are you going to get to school? How are you going to get to the store? They don't even have snow plows. They don't have snow removal equipment in these areas. So when the snow falls in your neighborhood, you're snowed in. Do you have a shovel? Any kind of shovel at all? Because now you're digging out. And who's going to clear the roads? Find construction equipment, right? Front loaders, graders, dump trucks, and they're going to bring in their construction equipment and try and move the snow like they would move dirt. Now, if you live in the northern tier of the country, New York, Maine, Michigan, they have snow equipment. They have snow removal and management equipment, and they have ice, and they have sand, and other ways to protect the roads. So, this is routine for them. But if you live in the south, you're not ready for this. But that's happening. And they're gonna completely misinterpret that. They're gonna say, wow, we haven't had snow like this since 4 weeks ago. They were having snow like this 4 weeks ago. And will they connect the dots? Will they say, hey, this is twice in 1 year, and I have never had snow in my lifetime living down here. And now we've had it twice in 1 year. Will they ever connect those dots and say, something weird's happening? No, they won't. Now, if they watch my videos, maybe they would. Probably not. But they probably wouldn't. They probably still wouldn't. They say it's weird weather, it's really rare, but it can happen. And it happened once in 1927 and again in 1952 or whatever. I'm making up the dates, okay? But that's what they'll say. We had snow in 1927. And it snowed, and it was all in the newspapers, and everyone got excited, and people couldn't drive, and they were driving their cars into ditches because of all the ice, and they'll remember that in 1927. It hasn't happened since. Well, now it's happened twice in the same winter because that's what's happening. These cold air masses are coming down, and the Gulf of Mexico is always anomalously hot. It never cools off. It only gets hotter in the future. And so when these cold air masses come down from the Arctic because of a collapse of the jet stream, because there is a generalized breakdown of the Earth dynamic system, then they can have these kind of events every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. And it's not weather. What's happening is not weather. You can talk about it as weather. The weather is going to be snowy right here in Florida. It's going to be record hot next week in Florida. And you can say that's the weather, but that's not what it is. It's a breakdown of the Earth dynamic system. That's what's happening. We live inside this system. We can't escape. There is no escape. This is our home. And the equivalent event is when the roof gets torn off. Then there's something wrong with your home. It doesn't work anymore the way it used to. And you have a kitchen in your home, but you can't cook there. And you have a living room in your home, but you can't live there. And you have a bedroom in your home, but you can't sleep there because the roof got torn off. That's the equivalent of what's happening to our home that we call the Earth. The roof has been torn off. And everything that you thought you could do on the Earth, and the places where you grew food, and the places where you processed food, and places where you had your great cities, and where the rivers were, where the bays were, and where the fishing was, and all the other things, everything you thought you knew over 8,000 years of living inside of this machine, during which time it was reasonably stable. Everything you thought you knew from 8,000 years of sticking your head outside and saying, this is my weather, this is my climate, is out the window now because the roof has been torn off. And this is not your home anymore. It is a home. It is different. It's going someplace. It's taking us with it when it's going, but it's not what we're accustomed to. And it will never again be what we're accustomed to. That's what's happening. That's the story. And it's all global heating. All of it, every bit of it. The temperatures of the oceans is all there because of global heating. The heat that accumulates in the air, in the atmosphere, is transferred to the water. Water has a very high specific heat. It can actually absorb a lot of heat. A lot of the heat that is sequestered in the atmosphere by greenhouse gases ends up in the water. Well, that's convenient, but it's not good. Because then it's heat that's available to make Alaska the same temperature as Mexico. And Florida is having record cold and snow. That's what happens when you disturb the system that we live inside of. We live inside this machine, and we have screwed it up by burning fossil fuels, which we can't stop doing. Here's something that is not happening. We are not changing. We're not changing. We really can't change. We can't really do that. We have become dependent on fossil fuels for survival. Simply stated. All your food comes from the supermarket. No, it doesn't. It comes from farms and plantations and forests thousands of miles away. All of that managed with heavy equipment. Planting, harvesting, processing, shipping, and a lot of heavy industry, food processing, manufacturing of food. Everything you eat that isn't produce or a fruit or a nut has been processed. So your bag of potato chips, even your meat and chicken has to be processed. You don't get a chicken with feathers on it, clucking and walking around your living room. Used to be you could do that, by the way. And then you butchered your own chicken. And you don't get your beef on the hoof. It's processed. And there's a factory where that happens. And that factory's full of humans. And they got special coats on and rubber aprons. And they're cutting these things up and cutting that other thing up and chopping it up and putting it in bags or putting it in wrappers and sending it off to the chiller. And it gets frozen. And then it gets sent off on big trucks with have refrigerators. And the trucks go to all the different places. And then you go to the shelf and you pull off some, a cut up chicken. Or you pull off the part of the chicken you want to eat, the chicken breast or the chicken thighs or the whatever, or chicken feet, and all this stuff is made available to you. It's been processed by somebody thousands of miles away, maybe even many thousands of miles away. And that's the system we are embedded in. We are embedded in the Earth system, but within the Earth system, we are embedded in a fossil fuel economy. So we are double embedded. And the Earth dynamic system, the big engine, which makes our smaller engine called industry possible, the big engine is going to take our smaller engine, industrialization, including industrialized agriculture, industrialized transportation, all of it. It's going to take that somewhere. And the places where they can grow crops will no longer be suitable for growing crops because the big picture, the big machine, the Earth itself, has moved. In some variable has moved. And now those places can't grow crops anymore. Now they don't get enough rain. Now they don't have enough warm days, growing days. Now that is too hot. Maybe you can plant the crops you want, but then it just gets too hot and you never get a harvest. So whatever happens, the changes in the Earth system that we are embedded inside of, that's our home, is going to affect all these subsystems like modern agriculture, food processing, transportation, all that stuff. And we are 100% dependent on those subsystems. Almost nobody on Earth is completely self-sufficient. Those days are gone. It's just too hard to be self-sufficient. It's a lot of work. And if you just go ahead and adopt the fossil fuel-based subsystem, then you can go to the store and buy your meat. You can go to the store and buy your vegetables. You don't have to plant vegetables. You don't have to have chickens and butcher them and pluck the feathers and do it. You don't have to do any of that. You just go to the store. Now, of course, you have to have money, but that means you have to have a job. Well, there's always got to be somebody willing to exploit you and pay you a wage. So, here's your money, and you don't garden, and you don't raise animals, and you don't do any animal husbandry. You don't have those skills anymore. No one has those skills anymore. You all work at a job somewhere, and you all go to the market. You all go to the same market. You buy the same stuff when you don't even know where it comes from. And that's the fossil fuel subsystem that we're all embedded in. We're all embedded inside of fossil fuel living. Every single thing, 100% of what you do, 100% of the time. 100% of everything you do, 100% of the time, requires constant access to cheap and available fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. Using these fuels has enhanced the greenhouse effect up there in the atmosphere. And by enhancing the greenhouse effect, we have caused the Earth system to move. It is on the move. The AMOC is shutting down. The oceans are super hot. 2023 was record heat. Everything went off the charts in 2023 and hasn't come back yet. We're getting record ice melt in Greenland. The record ice melt in Greenland is dumping cold, fresh water into the North Atlantic and shutting down the AMOC. That's happening. The sudden stratospheric warming of the polar vortex is causing the polar vortex to rupture and split and slow down, and that's disrupting the jet stream. And the jet stream disruption allows cold air to descend from the north and hot air to ascend from the equator. Both of these happen at the same time, like the yin-yang symbol, right? From Korea, right? The yin-yang symbol. One goes up, one goes down. And so we're having record heat in Alaska from one type of event and record cold in Florida from another type of event. And Florida is colder than Alaska. And that's happening. That's real. And that's caused by global heating. And you wouldn't think, well, how can Florida be record cold? Where's my global heating? I want my global heating. You got it. You got it. Your record cold is symptomatic. Your snow, your 2 feet of snow in Miami is symptomatic of global heating. Well, I don't believe that. That doesn't make any sense. That's not intuitive. Sorry. You don't. People who say things like that don't understand that they're embedded in an earth dynamic system that has been maintaining things the way you like them, the way you've gotten used to them, the way you need them to be for tens, hundreds of thousands of years. And that system is now breaking down. And we did it. We did that. And we can't stop doing that. And you might think, oh, well, just stop burning fossil fuels. Then you'll starve. Then you won't have your medications. Then you won't have your electricity. Then you won't have your car. You won't have a job. There won't even be a job to go to. They'll be done. Because you won't have transportation. You won't have goods. You won't have movement of money. You won't have a banking system. Everybody's done. Without fossil fuels, you're finished. So you have to keep burning them. Oh, well, that's okay. We'll just remove the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Well, then you're going to have to remove 30 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually. 30 billion with a B, tons with a T. Not 30 billion gallons, not 30 billion ounces, not 30 billion liters. 30 billion tons of CO2 emissions annually. Annually! You can't do that. And you also can't stop burning fossil fuels. And no one wants to hear that. But I have to tell you that. Because that's what's happening. You're burning fossil fuels and you're not stopping. And you won't stop. Because you can't. Because if you stop, you die. I die. They die. Those people die. Everybody dies. Because there won't be any food. There won't be any transportation. There won't be any electricity. There won't be anything. You won't get your medications. You won't get your health care. You won't get anything. Because it's all dependent on constant inputs of cheap and available fossil fuels. Primarily crude oil. That's what's happening. We are going on this journey. We are burning fossil fuels. We will not stop. If that is scary and if that's defeatist or doomer or whatever, no, that's what's happening. That's who we are. That's what we are. That's what we become. And this is what we're doing. It's happening, people. It's happening right now. It's not happening in the future. It's not happening in the year 2100. It's not happening somewhere else. It's happening here now. The Earth is getting hot. The Earth system is on the move. The polar vortex is broken apart. It may mend itself at some point, but then it'll break apart again. The trends are the trends. And they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. That's what's happening. We're doing this. We will keep doing this. We can't stop doing this. So where does this take us? That'll be the third video. I'll think about that. That's also the second book I'm going to write. Where does that take us? So I have to give some serious thought to this. And these videos help. And hopefully they help you. I got other things to do. I wanted to do this while I was thinking about it. And like the video, subscribe, give me some other warm fuzzies, and we'll see you next time. In the meantime, don't die.